thank you both so much for being here, and Letitia as well. Before we get started, I did want to do a land acknowledgement to acknowledge the land that I live and work on in Hamilton, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Erie, Neutral, Huron, Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. And I do this not as kind of a one-off statement, but as a reminder to myself and to others to continually reflect and act towards reconciliation. And so I welcome everybody here today, and those who may be tuning in now and who will be watching later. I encourage you to do similar reflection and take action towards reconciliation.
Very nice.
So thank you everybody for being here. Letitia, I don't know if you had any words of introduction, but I'll start with myself. My name is Jill, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Mood Disorder Society of Canada's National Youth Council, which Letitia is also part of. And we are really excited to be chatting with you both today about mental health, about sports, about advocacy. And I am personally very passionate about mental health. I study public health in school. So I like to talk about all things health. So, yeah.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Letitia. I'm also a member of the National Youth Advisory Council. I'm one of the co-chairs for the high school subcommittee, and I'm also part of the blog subcommittee where we're hoping to write an article about this wonderful interview. And just a bit more about myself. I'm a current high school senior living in St. John's, Newfoundland. And in post-secondary, I do hope on pursuing neuroscience to continue learning about my passion for mental health and the brain. And yeah, I think I speak for all of us, Kelly and Caitlin, when I say we're so thankful for you taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're super excited about this very important conversation.
I guess we'll just pass the floor to get started to you both to give a little bit of an intro to each of yourselves and maybe like why you're here, why you're joining us today.
Do you want me to start? Yeah. Okay. My name is Caitlin, and this is my dad. And I was first diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and anxiety when I was in grade 7. And I'm 29 now, so it's been a while, and I've had lots of ups and downs, but I'm mostly here just to share my story in hopes that people will know that it gets better and that they're not alone going through whatever kind of struggle they're dealing with.
And as you heard, I'm here as a parent, but also as a person that I struggle at times also, which kind of surprised me to a certain degree, because looking back upon my life after watching Kate and understanding what she was going through, and also watching her, become the strongest person I've ever met in my life. And then when I recognized, when I was looking back on my life, that there was a time in 1992, 93 that I went through some mental health issues. I didn't know it at the time. I was able to work through it with the help of somebody. And then finally in the summer of 2019, those same sort of thoughts came back. So I've been dealing with that for coming up 3 years now. And not ashamed of it.
Interesting that you mentioned you noticed upon reflection that you had previously experienced mental health challenges. Mm-hmm. My first question that I kind of wanted to ask each of you, you can go into as much or as little detail as you want, but how did you recognize that something wasn't right? And what motivated you to get help or to respond to that?
I think, so I'll go first if that's okay. Yeah. For us, like my dad and I had very different experiences for that, because like I said, I was in grade 7. So I was 12, and before grade 7 hit, the summer before, I started getting lots of thoughts in my head, mostly telling me that I was going to get sick or get cancer and die, and just really dark thoughts like that, really scary. And at first I just kind of tried to ignore them and not think about it. But of course, anyone who has struggled with anxiety and OCD know that those are powerful thoughts and they come back really strong. And it got to a point where my OCD convinced myself that if I stayed physically close to my dad and my mom, particularly my mom, that all those bad things wouldn't happen. So over the summer before grade 7, I started making up excuses why I didn't want to do things like go for a sleepover, or I was a competitive dancer and I made up excuses not to go to dance class or dance camp or things like that. And I was very convincing. And
or a very good liar if you want to tell the real truth.
Yeah, true. So my parents bought it at first, but then it got to a point at the beginning of grade 7 and my mom took me to school and I couldn't get out of the car. I was just having a full panic attack. I was crying and begging her not to make me go in. And I think at that point, my parents realized that this was actually something that we needed to deal with. And at that point, my mom and I drove home and my mom looked at the phone book, which I don't even think they exist anymore. She opened the phone book and literally called the first child psychologist that she could find and begged them to find time for us. And later that afternoon, I went for my first appointment. And like I said, being so young, I didn't really think, I didn't really even know what a psychologist was or what mental illness or anything was. So I was kind of just like, my parents are telling me I need to do this, so I'm going to do it. But for me, I think the most important step in getting better was my parents supporting me and pushing me to do that.
But maybe at the time you would have hated us for a while.
Oh yeah. And I told them, which I it's all in the past, and I know that even during all those hard times when they pushed me to do the things that I didn't want to do, I told them that I didn't like them and that they were horrible parents and all this stuff. And it's like deep down. And of course, now I know that them making me do those things is because they're such great parents. And even though it was hard for me, it would have been just as hard for them to look at their crying kid and, make me cry more. But it was obviously what I needed. And without them doing that and supporting me, I wouldn't have gotten better.
And one of the things, if I can add before telling my kind of story about Caitlin, after years of therapy, in fact, 4 years of therapy, she came up to us one time and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm starting to have more good days than bad." And I thought, wow, that's really profound. And it really says about the work that you have to put in. And you can do it. We were examples of you can do it, and it gets better. So. And in my case, I was already a grown adult when my stuff started to swirl around in my head. But my thoughts, in my opinion, were reasonable and rational when they started. I was a dad to 2 daughters already, Jessica and Megan, and Caitlin was on the way. I was entering my 10th year in the National Hockey League. And I think it's a reasonable question to say, how much longer can you do this? I had responsibilities that were maybe, affecting me in terms of, how much longer can I stay in the NHL? What am I going to do if I'm not playing in the NHL? How am I going to provide for my family? I think those are all reasonable questions that a person would ask themselves. But then when it went months later it was now during the hockey season, and I was playing really, really well, the best I had probably ever played. And then those questions went from, they were no longer questions. They were, you can't keep doing this. You're playing at a level that you've never been at. It's all going to fall apart. And then they became completely irrational. And as Caitlin taught us many, many years ago about the loop, and it was just going round and round and round. And I had no tools to break the loop. And luckily for me, I had a coach in Los Angeles by the name of Barry Melrose. And after, I was struggling for about 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And he took it upon himself to put me in contact with a person And it was nothing to do with my physical health. It was all my mental health. And so we started chatting. In fact, it was quite cool because I knew I was really in trouble and that my career was coming to a screeching halt. And when my coach introduced me to this person and asked if I'd be interested in working with that person, I said, of course. And then my coach, Barry, asked me if I would mind if he sat in on the session. And because he wanted to learn more about me, right? I'm a starting goalie. And I said, of course you can. So that, in fact, that really brought us all together. My coach and I, and the person, his name, by the way, is Tony Robbins. And so I was really spoiled to have a guy of that nature. And then, so we worked on that and I was able to get out of it. It took me quite a while, but I was able to get out of it. And we ended up going to the Stanley Cup Finals that year. And I say in large part because of the work I did with Tony and the help of Barry. But then in the summer of 2019, once again, those thoughts were reasonable, I think, because I had been on Hockey Night in Canada, I want to say about 20 years at that point, maybe going into my 21st year. And that's a long time, right? You're on a really, really big show, really popular show. I'm not getting any younger, of course. I was approaching 60 around that time. And so again, a reasonable question would be, how much longer can you be on national television? Why are you still around? It's it's for younger people. And so and those are okay questions, but then they turned into, again, the loop where you're not good enough and you better be perfect, and perfect is impossible, right? And in particular, perfect is impossible when it's a live television show. And so I put way too much pressure on myself. I hated it. I didn't think I was doing a very good job. And then it was at a family dinner, on a Sunday family dinner. I told everybody, not doing great and I need to go see somebody. But here's the foolish thing, Jill and Letitia. I waited. I didn't go when I said I should. I waited probably over a year from when I first knew I had some thoughts. And that was ridiculous because it was too lonely and too painful. And then when I finally did go, then I'm doing much better. And I'm proud that I went.
Thank you both for your honesty and thank you for sharing. I'm personally glad you're still around, still doing this type of thing. I think, in my opinion, it can be hard to identify, that something's not quite right when it's happening. But you look back and you reflect on it and you can kind of connect the pieces. And through this sort of ongoing process of learning about ourselves and about how to respond to our needs, I think it's really powerful that folks like us can get together and then share our stories. And maybe if that means someone can identify it like 6 weeks, a year before they would have otherwise, I think that's a really important thing. And I'm really grateful to be here and sort of facilitating that process. So thank you both. I also noticed in both of your stories, it kind of came up that those close to you and those around you were really crucial in the process of recovery, recognition and recovery. So I'll pass the floor to Letitia in case she wants to say anything else. But I think that kind of segues us nicely into our next question.
Yeah, thank you both for being so candid and really echoing what Jill said. And I especially like the fact that it's not always a linear journey, that sometimes there are those ups and those downs and those dips. I really think that's, motivational and inspiring to people to understand that mental health is a journey and it's not always point A to point B. There's so many stops in between. And, kind of to flow into our next question, for the both of you, how did the support of your family and each other contribute to your mental health journey?
Well, I don't think I would have a journey if I didn't have my family. Because I was so young, the only people that I told at the time that I was struggling was my family. Obviously my parents knew because they took me to the therapist, and I have 2 older sisters that also were aware, and we were very open with each other. And but other than that, I didn't tell any friends or really anyone else. It was just my family that knew, so I leaned on them the most. I mean, they were there and are still there for me when it's good and bad. I think personally, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am now if I didn't have the support of people. For me, I'm lucky that it's my family, but if it's friends, I mean, now I have a husband who's great. Mm-hmm. And it's just for me finding those people that love you and will just be there to support you, and they don't have to have the answers, and they just need to show you that they love you and that they're here for you. So for me, that was huge.
Mm-hmm. And the same for me. So I still have my stuff going on, and on occasion when like I have to travel to Toronto every Friday, and on occasion my wife will say to me when I get up Friday morning or before I go out the door, how are you doing? And it's like, really, how are you doing? Because maybe I don't look as good, or maybe I look troubled or worried before I head to the airport. So that kind of support really, really helps you that, hey, yeah, it's not a great day. And, you know, I can share that, no problem. And in fact, I'll go even further. Saturdays can be real difficult for me. I'm actually in a really good space right now. I think I've had 5 or 6 stress-free, trouble-free Saturdays in a row. But for a while, I was having a really hard time getting to go on air. And I would call my wife, and she was amazing. My wife, Donna, would save me. Oh, it's amazing. We'd do breathing and all these sorts of things. Sometimes it'd take 30 minutes or an hour, but I was able to do it.
That's fantastic. It's so great to know that you have those folks supporting you. And I do really empathize with the fact that they don't have to have the answers. Just knowing that their support is there is really, really powerful. And I can definitely relate to that. And having someone to explore, you know, strategies that work and don't work for you is fantastic. I have a similar experience where my partner has gotten to know me fairly well, and they can identify, you know, you're in your head a lot, is something wrong? And that can maybe be the external prompt you need to say, oh, take a second, step back and kind of think about it. And yes, that's incredibly powerful. And I think discussions like this, or at least I hope discussions like this, even if someone sees it who's wanting to support their loved ones better, or support a friend better, they can kind of understand that just being there is really powerful. So thank you both for sharing that. And it's really heartwarming to hear how you as a family have sort of helped support each other. And to go to kind of complement that, our next question is about, you know, what are sort of like some of the answers? What are the things that you individually practice, that maybe you practice with your wife, the breathing techniques? What are some of those other things that have helped you in your journeys?
Go ahead.
Okay. So when I first started going to therapy, the biggest thing was to try and just calm myself down. Like before I could try and rationalize any thoughts or distract myself, I just needed to be able to physically calm down. So we did a lot of breathing techniques. And one of the things was a visualization technique. So my therapist got me to create like a safe space in my head and imagine what that place looks like and who's there. So it was a garden, and it had lots of flowers, no bugs, and my family and our 2 family dogs, and just things like that. And at first, so that was the goal, to be able to get there in my head, because that's a happy, safe place. Mm-hmm. So to get there, first I'd have to visualize what it looks like, and it was very ugly and lots of dirt and all that. And then through breathing and just kind of calming my thoughts, I would eventually get to my happy place. And my dad and I actually, we would do that a lot together. And one thing, because my dad traveled a lot, he wasn't physically able to be here all the time, but anytime I needed him, I could call him and he would talk to me on the phone. And I mean, sometimes it would be hours on the phone in the middle of the night, him trying to get me calmed down. And so that was a huge thing for me. And then, of course, once I was able to do that, I worked on rationalizing my thoughts, because they are so irrational. And also distraction is very important to me. So I love movies. So whether it's watching a movie or online browsing my favorite clothing stores or things just that make me happy. So that's a big thing for me. And I'm also on medication right now, which has been great for me. I've been on it for like 10 years now, actually. So it works great for me, and I still see my therapist, and it's really just for me reminding myself that I need to keep doing things that make me happy and keep my brain healthy.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's very similar. A lot of these things I did learn from Caitlin, right? Because we were, as the parents, she taught us so much about mental health and all these different coping methods and so on. So when I just snuck away there for a minute, it just occurred to me that I do have a important tool that I use, and I'll show you in a sec. But so it is about rational thoughts. I have to remind myself that I can go on national television and fail, and that's an okay thing. In fact, I have one quick story about that. Last year, I also do, besides Saturday nights, I do Flames regional broadcasts. And so people might not know that, but, and in that regard, I do color alongside my play-by-play man, Rick Ball. And at the end of a lot of nights, we have to do a hit where you stay after the game and you record this hit that might go into a late night sports show. And these hits might be like 2 minutes or a minute or something. And I thought there was this night we recorded one and I was horrible. Like I was a horrible broadcaster in that hit. And normally you would say to your producer, let's do that again. And I thought, you know what, this is really healthy for me. I should let a really lousy hit go to air so that I'm okay with not being perfect. That was a very important night for me. In fact, I remember leaving the Saddle Dome here in Calgary, getting in my truck and going, way to go. Like that was good. That I could have easily said to the producer, let's just do this again. And nobody'd know, right? And I thought, no, I just should be real here and not be very good. And so that's been important for me. And okay, here's what I went to get. I carry a little index card with me in my wallet now, and it gives me some reminders. That's what Tony Robbins taught me back in the 90s. I had an index card that I laminated, and I'd look at it before the start of every game, before the start of every period. And it had 4 little reminders. This one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reminders. And the first one, of course, is breathing. And the last one is the person that's now helping me with my mental health told me this, which I never considered because I was just, trying to do my best always and not rewarding myself with anything. So he said, I deserve this success. And so that's an important thing. Now, whatever somebody might put on their index card that's important to them might not look anything like mine, but that's perfectly fine. And by the way, I did something on social media about my index card, I think in December, and I had fantastic feedback about that. People thought that's a great idea. And I had people, in fact, reach out to me on social media, say, I now carry an index card and with my pointers, right? So that might be a tool for somebody.
And maybe I'll just make one myself. That sounds fantastic.
Right?
I was going to say for people under the age of 60, they could just put it on phone as well.
Okay.
But whatever works.
Okay, that's funny. It never even occurred to me to put it on my phone. Write my notes. I can put that.
Or the background of
that's
the phone.
Funny.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
I appreciate you sharing the vulnerability it takes to be okay to mess up and to be free to make mistakes and to show that, messing up doesn't make you wrong or it doesn't make you not worthy of your success. It makes you human. And a lot of pressure we put on ourselves is put on us from the society we live in that says otherwise. And I think that contributes to a lot of stress for a lot of people. I know personally, I can relate to that too. Having those kind of affirmations that give you permission to fail, to make mistakes, to try new things, to learn, that's really powerful. So thank you both for sharing. And I definitely relate, Caitlin, to what you were talking about kind of that mind-body connection. And I was in no way as successful an athlete as you were, Kelly, but my first sort of introduction to that mind, body, mental health thing was through the athletics sort of realm. And so I think that's a really relevant discussion to have with a lot of folks, because it might be their first contact with mental health, performance, anxiety, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing that what seems kind of strange to me, how I got into this mindset about perfection and doing this, you know, when I was a goalie, like, you make mistakes all game long, right? And that's how goals are scored. And yet I was okay with that, you know, but then all of a sudden I got into this, and now I was strangely thinking, well, the opposite, that just be perfect. And I was just way too hard instead of laughing at my mistakes.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense, the mental illness. Like it makes your thought processes exactly that, distorted and not realistic. And so on one hand, you might cognitively know something to be true, and then on the other hand, your body's reacting with fear and you're just feeling completely off. So yeah. I can't relate to being a goalie ever, but I always thought it would be hard to know that whatever you do impacts the puck going in the net or the ball going behind you. Like, that's seems stressful to me.
Yeah, you get used to it though. You do. Yeah, you get used to, but there's a process, right? When you're a kid, you start playing, and then there's a few parents in the stands, and then maybe the older you get, there's a few more people in the stands, and then once you start to get even higher, like in major junior, then you get quite a few people, like 3,000, 6,000 people, depending, and then you get feedback, which is really good, and so you start to understand that and how that maybe adds pressure, but you learn to accept it. And then if you ever get to play pro, then you understand, you know, it could be 20,000 and they might hate you every time you let in a goal if you're at home. And then, you know, this is going off on a tangent, but I always say for every goalie, at some point at home, you'll get booed, and it will hurt. It will really hurt, because you know, you hope those are the people that are supporting you most, but unfortunately that position lends itself to a lot of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, even I really like what Caitlin was saying about how it was just changing your thoughts. But I know that's so difficult to do, but just going to your happy place and, you know, like mentally going back to that place. I feel like that's such easy advice. And even, you know, the things that you can implement every day, carrying an index card, typing it up on your notes. You know, I really, you know, like really thank you for sharing those ideas and really showing, you know, folks at home that you can work on your mental health and you can implement it into your everyday life. I really do think, especially the index card, keeping that in your mind is so important. And, you know, kind of leading into what we were just talking about with sports and everything, I know that sports can help mental health, or sometimes it can be draining your mental health. So I guess, Kelly, you know, our question for you, or even Caitlin through dance, what aspects of sport culture really helped your mental health and what didn't?
You want me to start this one? I can tell you that I think there would have been nothing helpful about sports and mental health back in the 90s, because nobody was talking about mental health. And I think we most likely would have been ridiculed or bullied, or whatever term you want to use, because back then, and I can't speak for all athletes, I can just say in my sport at that time, there was just absolutely no discussion about it whatsoever. And so that's kind of why I was so surprised by Barry Melrose, and why I was so eager to allow him to stay in the room and listen to what Tony and I were talking about, because it frankly surprised me that he had gone out basically on a limb, much to my surprise. In today's world, I'm happy to tell you that there's so much support. I mean, it's so fantastic. Every team employs at least one person to help the teams, the players with mental health. I know most teams have many people in those positions that the players can reach out to. In fact, I just spoke to president of a team last week, and he kind of thanked me for sharing our family story, and Caitlin, and he said that he is so impressed with the young kids in today's world, because a lot of the young players, not a lot, all the young players on his team, they take advantage of the help that's provided for them. And he said, it's so great. Like he said, nobody's ashamed of it. They're all doing it. They all feel better because of it. And they get better results because of it also. And so that's the transformation that I've seen in the 30 years in sports. I think it's just so heartwarming now. And that was Luc Robitaille.
Oh,
yes,
really?
Yes.
Luc.
Right?
That's fantastic to hear. I can kind of see it from both sides. Like sports for me has given me so many fantastic things in my life, like skills, opportunities. It's been amazing. But at the same time, I can recognize that it is a competitive environment, and it can definitely sort of encourage habits in people who may be prone to perfectionism or, you know, self-sacrifice and stuff like that, which was challenging for me. But I think with what you said, exactly, having those resources available to those athletes, to those young people who can support them through this process and make sure that we get the most out of sport and really use it as a tool to promote growth and to encourage our young folks to, you know, I don't know, pursue athletics if that's what they want to do. I think that's fantastic to hear that, at least in the NHL, things seem to have substantially improved. And maybe to your credit, you helped with that too.
I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I think people like Michael Landsberg with Bell Let's Talk, I think he has been, in my opinion, the greatest Canadian in that sense, because he got us talking about it long before anybody else would have publicly. And so Michael, I think, has just done a wonderful job creating this open space for all of us that we have today.
And thank you both for contributing to that. Caitlin, was there anything you wanted to add to speak to your experience doing dance and how maybe sports culture helped or didn't help you?
So my experience was very positive when it came to dance. I was a competitive dancer, but with that came hours and hours spent at the dance studio, and I made all of my best friends were at my dance studio. So for me, I felt like it was like an escape when I was able to go to dance, because I could hang out with my friends and also just really focus on what I was doing, my dancing and my skills, and all of that was a really good distraction for me. So it was beneficial to me, but at the same time, like you mentioned, I can definitely see how even myself, I could have maybe latched on to something and it could have been a negative for me, but luckily I was dealing with so much. I think my brain just couldn't take anymore. So when I got to dance, it was like just kind of like a relief. So
yeah, that was incredible to Donna and I, that once she started to see her therapist and she was able to start doing some of the things that she loved, like going back to dance and so on, we were actually quite scared when she had performances. And we're like, oh boy, because we knew what she was thinking a lot of the times. And we kind of thought the pressure of going up on stage and performing in front of a lot of people would you know, she might shut it down or whatever. And wow, that's the courage that we really admired in her, and the strength that she was able to, that you were able to. It was so beautiful to watch. We were more afraid than she was. In the beginning, I'll say. Yeah. Then we understood it.
That's incredible. It's nice to know. I mean, mental health is such a funny thing, because for me personally, it was very performance oriented, and I really had a hard time with that. But it sounds like neither of you really did.
I mean, for me, no, but I also, like, it wasn't my career or anything like that. So I think it was always just a fun experience. I didn't have that pressure of like, I need to be at a certain level in order to provide for my family or
It's just about the passion, and then you can take away those external stressors.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And for me, just in my younger days, I kind of accepted and liked pressure. And it became such a big part of my life that I kind of have to say, this is going to sound odd. I kind of had to try and create pressure in my life in the summers and stuff, because it was going along what I thought too smoothly. And I like to create a little bit of pressure just on myself, not towards my family, but just towards myself. So I'd sort of stay on top of things. If
like
that makes
lighting a fire under your butt kind of thing.
Yeah. And in fact, I know this is going to sound really strange to people, but when we started to travel after I retired, and we would, as a family, decide where we might go. And my lovely wife, Donna, would give me little reminders like, have you booked the trip yet? Have you booked the hotel, the flights? And I'd wait till the very last second, basically, to see if I could pull it off or not.
Really? That's amazing.
How ridiculous. And I usually did, but I could have caused myself so much angst, I guess, or harm if I just would have booked it when she asked me to, instead of waiting an extra month or 6 weeks.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Caitlin, I love what you were saying about dance. I know it's such a unique sport where there's like a creative outlet and a physical outlet. So it's really great to hear that was a positive way for you to, support your mental health. And, definitely what Jill said, like lighting that fire under your butt. And sometimes, that bit of pressure, that bit of motivation, it's really what you need to get up and go. So I kind of think even bringing in those conversations into mental health is really positive, letting people know that it's okay to have a bit of stress, a little bit of pressure, because really it might help you perform even better. I feel like that's such a unique element. So earlier on, Caitlin, on Kelly, we kind of heard you say like more good days, and we know that you have a clothing line called More Good Days. So maybe you'd want to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it started, my husband and I started it last January, and it all started through like mental health speaking engagements and things like that. Like Dad, I had said to my parents in high school that I'm having more good days than bad. And that's something that I like to tell people when I am speaking about my experience. And my husband just really likes that phrase, more good days than bad. And he is an artist. So he was just kind of having fun and made some art for what could be a t-shirt. And we sent it to a company and they printed it. And it was just going to be a Christmas gift for each of our families. And my dad had it on for, I think it was a Twitter video or things like that. And people just started commenting, I love your shirt. Where can I get it? Where did you get your shirt? And we're like, Hayden, like my husband and I were like, should we like make them? So we just kind of started, and it's been a really cool experience for us. Like I said, Hayden's an artist, so he designs all of our shirts and graphics, and it's been really nice to be able to share experiences with other people who have messaged us on Instagram or have purchased something and shared a little bit about their story and how they're doing. And we also donate 10% of each sale to mental health charities. Right now it's the Canadian Suicide Prevention Services. So we enjoy the feeling of giving back and hoping that whatever we can do will help people. And it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, we have lots of designs, and the company is called More Good Days Clothing. So if you want to check it out and just give us a follow or something. But yeah, it's really fun. We're really enjoying it.
We're so proud of them. I'm happy to say they have these little stickers. If you buy something, can you see the More Good Days sticker on my laptop?
Oh, yeah.
And a whole bunch of my co-workers at Hockey Night in Canada, they have them on their tablets, and Ron McLean has More Good Days in his dressing room, and it's just really cool. And we all share these stories together, right, about how we're doing. And Kyle Bukauskas, that incredible young broadcaster that we have on our show, is proud to show on his tablet while he's getting ready that the More Good Days sticker is pointed outwards so people will see it. It's just really cool.
And for us, having just like when we're wearing our clothes and it just says more good days on it, we don't expect everyone to like know what it's about, right. But it's just such a nice thing to see. And people who have no knowledge of the company or what the message is behind it will be like, more good days. I love that. Who doesn't want more good days? So it's true. Very like universal too. Even if you aren't dealing with any mental health issues, just seeing that, it's like, I like it.
I've lost count of how many times I've been in line for a coffee at Tim's in the morning wearing my More Good Days sweatshirt or t-shirt, and it starts a conversation. It's just really cool that people say, "Hey, I love that. Where'd you get that?" or "What's the story behind it?" So I tell them, and yeah, it's been fantastic to share that sort of conversation with complete strangers, really.
I was going to say that it must start these conversations with folks if they want to know, hey, where did that come from? It's one, affirming to see this positive message as a positive reminder. And I'm sure there are countless people who take away a message from that who don't talk to you and you don't know, it creates this kind of ripple effect. Like if one person sees that sticker on the broadcast, then they think about it, they start a conversation, and then that impacts other people. So it does have this positive ripple effect that is, I think, immeasurable almost. And it's always nice to have sort of that feedback when someone talks to you about disclosing your experience or what worked for you, and then they share theirs, and you kind of connect in this way about something that was previously really hard to talk about and still is often hard to talk about. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, we agree. And that's why we're so honored that you invited us on this with you guys, Letitia and Jill, because this is a thing that I really feel is gaining a lot of momentum, having conversations like this. Like, I don't think 5 or 7 years ago, we would have had a Zoom call like this with fellow Canadians and just listening to each other and learning and understanding. And I just find it to be a really exciting place where we are right now, because the growth of this is dramatically changed. And I'm just so curious what it's going to be like in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, where it's really going to be at a different level that none of us would have ever expected.
It is really motivating to see and to hear and to know that in many ways over the past 2 years, even, we've had the technology like so accessible to connect in this way and make it so distributed, so reach so many people and have such a positive impact. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 5-10 years. Exactly.
Right.
I think also the slogan "More Good Days" to me reminds me of how when I was back in the thick of it, there felt like there were an awful lot of bad days. And so I think what's powerful about that statement, in my perspective, is that, it might not even be that your good days outnumber your bad to begin with, but that slowly maybe you'll have an extra hour of goodness, you'll have an extra half day of goodness, and then an extra day, an extra week, an extra month, and it'll kind of start, like, your goodness will start expanding as you work on yourself, as you get support, as the communities help build your capacity around you, as others, support you. So I think that's really powerful. And that's kind of what I took away from that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. The more we can just spread the word of getting healthy and supporting and loving everyone else and their journey is what's important. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Definitely, even thinking about how technology has kind of lit the fire for mental health. If it wasn't for that one social media post, it really wouldn't have kick-fired More Good Days. So I really think that's such a beautiful sentiment of how technology has really upheld mental health conversations, from small things like a Twitter post or big things like an interview. So just to kind of close off our interview, we just kind of have one last question, mostly for our audience, but what advice do you have for athletes or young people who may be struggling with their mental health, but are a bit scared to speak out?
You want to go first or should I?
Sure.
You'd? Okay.
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
So for me, I guess because I experienced a lot of mental health issues when I was younger, I would want to tell people that it does get better and that there are people there that love you and support you, and just to find those people. Like for me, it was my family, but it could have been friends or a teacher, or someone is there to help you, and you don't have to do it alone. And another thing is just keep fighting. It's hard. It can be very hard, and you can definitely feel like quitting, and it's never an option. So you have to make small goals and be proud of yourself for all of them. And it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. But you have to keep fighting because you're worth it. And it's worth it in the end.
And here's the biggest fighter. Love it. And so what I would add to that is that just from a parent's standpoint or perspective, make sure that you try and get them the help that they need, and don't get mad at them. You'll certainly be in difficult times yourself, trying to understand it and learn and be supportive in your best way, but they don't want to be in a bad place either, right? That's not their personal choice. It's just their brain is not helping them at that moment. And so be understanding, be supportive. And like Caitlin said, when you're doing it personally, appreciate the little goals that you might make. And by the way, before we conclude, I just wanted to say how great this is that this whole conversation started from a social media post. So Letitia reached out to me about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And we had that little connection, and I've done one other thing with Letitia. Jill, were you on that one as well?
I attended Letitia's event, but I don't think I actually got to see your talk, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so this is how that community can really help people. And you guys are the center of this community, and we want to thank you for your hard work and doing this, because had Letitia not reached out to me, we wouldn't have this contact. We wouldn't be having this conversation. So I suggest to people out there and young people out there, because this is so empowering for you and for an old guy like me to see the young people like you being such a big part of this community, that if you feel like reaching out to somebody, just send them a note. Who knows what might happen, right? Who knows what might come of it? And so that's the beautiful thing of how Letitia got a hold of me. And I just think the world of both of you for what you're doing and what you have done.
Thank you both. Right back at you, I guess. It's so like re-energizing to me personally, as someone who like wants to work in health, who volunteers in this kind of mental health space, to have these conversations with folks and feel the connection and then gain motivation from that, and consider the impact that we're collectively creating. And Caitlin, while you were speaking, I was just thinking of more good days, but more good people. Like there are good people there, and you two folks are good and a wonderful example of resiliency and perseverance despite hard times. And I think personally, if sports has given me anything, it relates back to kind of what Caitlin was saying of giving up is not an option. And damn it, if I'm going to let this mental illness stop me, I trained for my sport, I can train my mind, So yep. I think a lot of what you're saying tonight has been really impactful, and I really appreciate it. So thank you both.
I do have one thing to add, sorry. One of the things that Kate and I like to do, as you can tell, we like sharing our stories, right? And you, Jill, by sharing with us is beautiful, and thank you. And all the other people that might be watching this, if you're going through something, but you don't want to share your story publicly, that's perfectly fine. You're not required to share with the whole world, right? Only if you're comfortable. But the only thing I would suggest is share with your family or friends so that you get the help that you need. That just don't do it alone, because as I said before, it's too lonely, too painful. and once you get the help, you won't believe it. But by no means are you required to maybe post on social media what you're going through, and if you're afraid of it. But I will say this for Caitlin, when she first started sharing her story in the spring of 2013, I was really afraid of social media. And I thought she might get bullied, or, you know, the bashers out there, the haters. And I don't think we had one person, have we?
No, not one negative.
Not one negative
comment or rude comment from anyone. So,
yeah. Yeah. And because the reason I bring that up is because we have a person really close to us that we love dearly, and they choose not to share their story, but they get the help that they need. Mm-hmm. And that's important.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't make their story any less valuable in any way. And I think it's really great that you brought that up, especially kind of in the context of today, where us young folks feel like, you know, we should be all social media advocates. We should be leveraging these tools that we have, but at the same time, we might not have the space to do it, or the safety, and it might not be what's best for our own mental health. So I do think that is a really, really important reminder, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, you both, for your time and for sharing your story. I think I speak for Jill and I and all our viewers that this has been such an impactful conversation. And, you know, like, these conversations are really they're going to start sparking more conversations and reaching those people who really may need to be hearing these stories. And, you know, just a reminder that you don't have to share what you're uncomfortable with. And, you know, some of the best advice that I received too is, like, when you're sharing, make sure there's some distance between you and your story, right? You don't want to be triggering yourself again, possibly, or doing anything that make you feel like uncomfortable. But of course, you know, we really do appreciate, you know, Caitlin and Kelly, when you do come here and you do share your story with us. And, you know, Kelly, you mentioned reaching out to me, but I really appreciate you, like, staying in touch and continuing to kind of help us sharing our mental health advocacy and your journey and everything. We just appreciate it tremendously. And this has been such an insightful conversation. So yeah, we just really want to thank you for your time tonight.
Our pleasure. Loved it. Thank you very much.
It was fantastic to meet you.
You as well.
Yeah.
Take care.
See you. Bye. Take care.